Richard the Lionheart is a legendary medieval warrior, a fierce fighter who led the Third Crusade against Saladin. What many know less about is how he became so famous or why exactly he chose to invade the Levant. Well, before we get into the story, let me tell you, when news broke that Christian pilgrims were being oppressed in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, England's King Richard the Lionheart assembled a Crusader army to conquer the Holy Land and put an end to the Muslim domination. That was a massive undertaking that would forever change medieval Europe. Valiantly charging into battle was always an option for the brave knights. They dreamed of retaking Jerusalem and going home as heroes. The prospect of returning empty-handed or worse, under Saladin's terms, was disheartening. But besieging Jerusalem was an entirely different kind of war, requiring patience and preparation that the Crusaders lacked. The Crusaders had to navigate rough terrain and carry their equipment with them. Plus, Saladin's spies and light cavalry harassed them constantly, trying to slow down their retreat. Surrendering Jaffa would mean losing access to the Mediterranean Sea and risking a surprise attack from Saladin. Also, giving up without a fight would harm his reputation as a warrior and diminish his influence among European rulers who were expecting victory. Richard needed to defend Jaffa while planning his next move. To do that, he used his engineering skills to reinforce the town's defenses. With this unexpected aid, Richard felt renewed hope. He rallied his troops, preparing them for a final stand against Saladin. He repaired crumbling walls, built watchtowers and organized patrols to monitor the sea and nearby hills. Richard's valor and leadership serve as an inspiration, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, hope can endure and courage can triumph. So if you enjoyed watching, share this video with others who might also love it. Richard's valiant efforts during the siege of Jaffa are truly inspiring. His strategic brilliance, determination and compassion left a lasting impact on history. He truly was a remarkable ruler. He organized athletic competitions, encouraging his knights to test their strength and skill. He intended to meet Saladin's army in an open field, where his knights would have the advantage. Their mission was to locate and report back on Saladin's troop movements, providing Richard with the information he needed to strategize. Meanwhile, within Saladin's camp, a similar scene played out. A group of scouts ventured out, tasked with finding the main Crusader force and relaying their findings back to their leader. If successful, this battle would not only bolster his troops' morale, but also put him in a strong position for negotiations. At the same time, he implemented a program to improve diets, ensuring his men received better nutrition. These measures aimed to restore the spirit and health of his soldiers, preparing them not just for battle, but for potential lengthy negotiations. Richard and Saladin's paths were about to converge, setting the stage for a pivotal clash that would shape the future of the Crusades. He would engage Saladin in battle and try to force him into a treaty that would give the Crusaders a lasting peace. This decision marked a shift in Richard's strategy. Instead of focusing solely on recapturing Jerusalem, he aimed to achieve a compromise that would secure peace in the region. Moreover, he encouraged townspeople to improve their homes' defenses, transforming each building into a potential stronghold. Throughout the journey, the Crusaders struggled with exhaustion, dwindling supplies and Saladin's attacks. In the meantime, Saladin's relentless attacks pressured the Crusaders, forcing them to stay vigilant and united. Richard knew that continuing to hold Jaffa indefinitely would weaken his forces further. He also realized that Saladin, despite suffering losses, was still a formidable threat. Through it all, Richard's leadership shone. He shared the hardships of his troops, made difficult decisions to protect the innocent, and inspired his men to keep fighting for a better outcome. Every knight knew that their king would not allow them to leave Jaffa empty-handed. Richard's leadership during this time was exemplary. He worked alongside his knights, sharing their hardships. He also established a system to distribute goods equally, ensuring no one went hungry. But Richard and his knights protected their rear, ensuring everyone's safety. In October, he attacked the city with 30,000 troops, hoping to catch the Crusaders off guard. Knowing the coming battle would be fierce, he didn't want innocent lives lost or disrupted. He helped families flee, offering them protection until they reached safety. This decision showed Richard's humanity and commitment to protecting not just his soldiers, but all innocents caught in the conflict. What followed was an intense battle. Saladin's army surrounded Jaffa, cutting off food and water supplies. The siege lasted for weeks, testing the Crusaders' resolve. However, Richard prepared for this possibility and managed his resources carefully. When the siege began, he rationed food and water, making sure the supplies lasted as long as possible. He also kept watch over the town's defenders, ensuring they stayed alert and motivated throughout the siege. Finally, after days of hardship, they reached Jaffa. His gut feeling told him to charge ahead, to attack Jerusalem right away, but his mind urged caution. After careful consideration, he chose to heed his mind's advice. His decision was simple. He would retreat from Jerusalem and regroup later. He didn't want to waste his men's lives on a pointless attack. Instead, he planned to use his time wisely, building fortifications along the coast. These structures would help ensure the safety of supply lines and protect against Saladin's attacks. With this approach, Richard hoped to be ready to capture Jerusalem when the time was right. He wanted to win, but not at the cost of his army's well-being. This choice showed his strategic thinking and ability to balance risks and rewards, making him stand out as a great military leader. They were already exhausted from months of campaigning, and the thought of enduring a long siege filled them with dread. And if you leave a comment below, we'll personally reply to your message. Now back to the video. Furthermore, the harsh weather conditions made it even more unappealing. Rain and mud made movement difficult. Supplies were harder to transport, and the elements could dampen their spirits. It couldn't handle such a large influx. Adding to this pressure, Saladin sent envoys to Jaffa demanding its surrender. He believed the Crusaders were weakened and demoralized, and would accept a quick surrender, ending the conflict peacefully. However, Richard rejected Saladin's proposals. Now the path to Jerusalem lay open, a dream every Crusader had envisioned, but fulfilling this dream would prove far from easy. Richard began his first advance on Jerusalem, but Saladin employed a new strategy. He devastated all resources along the route, burning crops and poisoning wells. It was a cunning way to further weaken the Crusaders, but Richard was up for the task. He led his men into battle, defeated Saladin's armies and marched to the gates of Jerusalem. But this Crusader king had to make a difficult choice. Should he conquer the holy city or go home? Let's explore this intriguing question in this episode. After the victory at Arsuf, the Crusader army secured the vital port of Jaffa. As they neared Jerusalem, Richard and his commanders faced a major dilemma. Besieging the city meant long and dangerous supply lines. Saladin's forces were positioned outside, ready to strike at any moment. On top of this, the Crusaders had suffered severe shortages of water and food. Winter was also approaching, increasing the risk of cold and disease. Holding Jerusalem after capturing it would also be an immense challenge. So what was the best course of action? Despite all these challenges, some leaders favored immediate attack. On the other hand, retreating to Jaffa or waiting there to strengthen their forces seemed like defeat to many Crusaders. In those difficult moments, Richard, the Crusader king, faced a tough decision. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support really helps us grow. With his choice made, Richard directed his troops to abandon their siege works and return to Jaffa. It wasn't an easy journey. There Richard confronted a new problem. While the port was initially useful, it was now overflowing with refugees from Jerusalem and soldiers returning from the failed siege. Now at Jaffa, Richard understood that despite his army's exhaustion, maintaining his presence in a holy land was crucial. Meanwhile, his knights patrolled the surrounding countryside, gathering intelligence on Saladin's forces and searching for supplies. But it wasn't enough. While the Crusader army rebuilt Jaffa, Saladin gathered his forces, eager to capitalize on their weakened state. During this time, Richard made one critical decision: evacuate civilians. Then finally, after 4 long weeks, reinforcements arrived. Richard's brother, King John of England, had come with additional troops to relieve the siege. Richard's decision to defend Jaffa proved wise. Not only did he maintain his foothold in the Holy Land, but he also gained valuable time to reorganize his forces. However, defending Jaffa came at a cost. The prolonged siege drained the Crusaders' resources and exhausted their troops. With this realization, Richard made a strategic decision. But before engaging in any peace talks, Richard knew he had to boost his troops' morale and physical strength. Richard's plan involved a risky maneuver. He would lure Saladin's forces into a decisive battle by leaving Jaffa with a small garrison. As Richard prepared for the upcoming confrontation, a small group of his knights set out from Jaffa to scout for Saladin's army. What would follow would become a moment of truth for both armies. And as we come to the end of another captivating episode, I invite you to join me in our next installment.